All right. Nice. All right. We'll have to. I don't see Mayor Green yet, but why don't we just get started, because we got a few people in the audience and it is
Okay.
10 minutes late. We'll just get started and we'll just.
All right, I will kick it off.
Let's do it.
Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to tonight's conversation, and I would like to especially thank our Black mayors for taking the time to discuss Juneteenth, its history, and its importance today. My name is Summer Jones, and I was elected a trustee for South Orange Village in 2019. Before we begin this amazing conversation, I would like to present our extraordinary mayors and give a brief bio. Mayor Frank, I'm going to start with you, as you are our sister town. Frank McGehee is the mayor of the Township of Maplewood. In this role, Mr. McGehee is focused on making Maplewood a safe, welcoming, inclusive, thriving, and more sustainable community for its 25,000 residents and business owners. Prior to that, Mr. McGehee served as deputy mayor for the Township of Maplewood for 2 years. He was elected to Maplewood's Township Committee in November 2016 and re-elected in November 2019. Professionally, Mayor McGehee is a senior analytical marketer with more than 20 years of management and leadership experience at high-profile startups and Fortune 500 companies, including DraftKings, Tidal, Harrah's Entertainment, and Bank of America. Mayor Baraka is the 40th mayor of the city of Newark. A native of Newark whose family has lived in the city for more than 80 years, Mayor Baraka's progressive approach to governing has won him accolades from grassroots organizations to the White House. With a forward-thinking agenda that reduced crime to its lowest levels in 5 decades, addressed affordability while maintaining steady growth, lowered unemployment, and returned local control of schools after more than 2 decades, Mayor Baraka has defied expectations since taking office in 2014. Mayor Baraka's futurist agenda includes the implementation of a groundbreaking partnership called Hire, Buy, Live, Newark, a program that marks the first time that any U.S. city has sought to transform its economy by combining employment, procurement, and residential strategies. As part of his commitment to strengthen Newark's position in the expanded technology space, the city launched Link Newark. The communications network of Sidewalk Kiosks provides Newark residents and visitors with free gigabit Wi-Fi, mobile device charging, phone calls to anywhere in the U.S., access to municipal services, maps, and directions, and real-time local information on city streets at no cost to taxpayers or users. It's actually a really awesome program. Mayor Baraka is also recognized nationally as a thought leader in the space of urban revitalization and his defiance of a hostile presidential directive targeting the immigrant community with an executive order designating Newark as a sanctuary city solidified his status as one of the country's most progressive elected officials. Mayor Michelle Delasport is a Haitian American daughter and the mayor of the Township of Union. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree in political science from Rutgers University and subsequently received a master's degree in city and regional planning from Edward J. Glaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers. Michelle is a small business owner of an urban planning consultancy firm and has over 20 years of professional experience in land use planning, redevelopment planning, and community economic development. She is a licensed professional planner and nationally certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. She also serves as chairperson of the New Jersey chapter of the American Planning Association's Redevelopment Planning Committee and is a member of the National American Planning Association Ethics Committee. Prior to being elected, she served as a member of the Township of Union Planning Board, not only as an active member, but as a vice chairperson. To date, she continues to serve as a planning board member, as well as a chairperson of the Township's Economic Development Advisory Committee and ADA Committee. Mayor Delasport understands the benefits of planned and appropriately scaled economic and housing development. She is skilled at working with residents, stakeholders, and business owners and offering planning recommendations that are reflective of the community's vision. She is an active parishioner in her church and an advocate of community involvement. Fully committed to her civic duties, Mayor Delasport is proud of her hometown and prioritizes the promotion of sound planning practices and offers her wealth of knowledge, experience, and skills to the township. Her intentions are to be strategic and about development initiatives responsive to residents and the business community, and thoughtful and proactive about addressing quality of life issues. Mayor Ted Green was raised in East Orange, New Jersey, and attended East Orange Public Schools. Over the past 20 years, he has distinguished himself as a professional in the field of property maintenance and housing revitalization. Mayor Green has been active in East Orange political and civic affairs for over 25 years. He is a member of the Third Ward Democratic Municipal County Committee and is active East Orange Block associations and civic groups. He is also a former aide to the New Jersey State Senator Richard Cootie and served as an appointed member to East Orange Housing Authority, to which he would also serve as a council liaison. On January 1st, 2018, he was sworn in as the 14th mayor of the city of Orange after winning an overwhelming 96% of the vote. Mayor Green recognized in his early years the need for positive programs and activities for youth in East Orange. As an elected official, he expanded his scope of involvement and has implemented community outreach initiatives and sponsored multiple pieces of legislation, including prohibiting the sale, offer, or possession of any toy gun or imitation firearm which looks real to a minor or adult within the city of East Orange. Legislation to protect homeowners from foreclosure through the city's Moratorium Act, and sponsored a resolution through the Law and Legislative Committee to provide tax abatement assistance to East Orange residents. Mayor Green has received a plethora of citations, awards, and accolades for his exemplary commitment and dedication to community service. Mayor Green also developed a hugely successful and widely recognized Mayor on the Block Cleanup and Community Engagement Initiative, where he actually walks the community on a biweekly basis to assess the needs of his residents. Under his administration, crime decreased an additional 17% between 2018 and 2019, with more than 50 new police officers on the street, while an unprecedented $1 billion of private capital is currently being invested in the city. So those are our mayors. And so thank you very much. I want to thank all of you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I actually want to kick it off. And I want this to be more of a conversation. And so, as you guys all know, this year we are celebrating Juneteenth for the first time in the state of New Jersey. It's after 156 years after the June 19th, 1865, after people discovered that they were actually free, and they had been free for a number of years. For my purposes, I know I did not learn about Juneteenth in school, so I would love to know why you believe declaring Juneteenth as a holiday in New Jersey is significant, and what does it mean to you?
Ladies first, I think.
Why did I know that was coming? So I was very happy when I read that the Senate unanimously passed a resolution establishing June 19th as the Juneteenth National Independence Day on Tuesday. I anticipate that New Jersey will follow suit soon, and I think it's significant to New Jersey for so many reasons. And I'll start off with education for all races. We are the most densely populated state in the country, and I would guess that prior to last year, during the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a significant amount of people who didn't know what Juneteenth represented. And ask yourself, right? When did you first learn about Juneteenth? Was it elementary school, high school, college, or as an adult, or maybe it was last year? So, declaring Juneteenth a public holiday in New Jersey, it's important because to me, it serves as a medium to introduce a necessary dialogue about the ramifications of the Emancipation Proclamation and its significant impact on our history. It also serves as a reminder to our counterparts about the tenets of slavery and the many levels of racial disparities and injustices suffered by the Black race. I mean, you think about it, 1862 to 1865, people remained in slavery, although there was a national proclamation to grant the Black race its freedom. And so for all people, it's a moment in time that forces us to reflect upon current day society, whether it's the socioeconomic inequities or even the opportunities that exist in our state. But inevitably, in my opinion, declaring Juneteenth the public holiday in New Jersey is really a call to commemorate and highlight the Black experiences, whether that be in the form of setbacks or accomplishments. But it's important to highlight those experiences on a state, regional, and local level.
Veronica?
I would add, that it's also important for us to understand this peculiar institution of slavery, that there are tens of millions of Americans who ancestors were directly tied to physical bondage and chattel, and a discussion around our lives in this country. It's never been really discussed in a real academic and serious way. To study Juneteenth, one commemorates the freedom of millions of Americans, and it established our Jubilee Day, our Independence Day, because July 4th, as we celebrate July 4th, there is a speech Frederick Douglass made, "What to the slave is the meaning of the 4th of July." Millions of Americans were still chained to the plantation July 4th, 1776. It was many years later that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and then the end of the Civil War. So, and Dred Scott, that declared us property in 1857, was almost 100 years after Dred Scott, and we were still slaves in the United States then. And so that needs to be discussed and pointed out clearly. And I think that jumping off point helps us to get a real understanding of why conditions exist the way they exist today, help us figure out real solutions of how to solve some of these problems in our country, for sure. So we should be talking to people about what Juneteenth actually is. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who know what the holiday is, but they don't know what it's about.
Yeah, I think that it's super important because as a nation, we're just far behind. It's kind of aligns with, our communities being behind in resources, in education. I talked about this recently about the caste, and how we've always been the bottom of the caste. And when you're at the bottom of the caste, there's only one place to go, and that's to go up. But it takes a lot of time to get up. And in our history, has been ignored, or better yet, it's been truncated to just one particular component of it, and not to the struggle. And this is the true liberation day of our country, because if all people are created equal, we were never equal. I mean, theoretically, to a certain extent, we're still not equals. So, one can say July 4th was Independence Day, but how is it Independence Day? It can't be if everyone is not free. So this is really important. And you asked a question about when did I learn about Juneteenth? I learned about it 4 or 5 years ago, so I was out of college, I was out of grad school, I was ignorant, right? Well, why is that? It's because I wasn't exposed, and I read all these books, but I still didn't understand, the value and the importance of Juneteenth. And that's why it's important to raise awareness. This panel that we're doing, this discussion we're having, this is important because this is important. People will listen to this, hopefully in the weeks and months and years to come. And soon Juneteenth will be more part of the mainstream of our country. I was very pleased to find out this morning about the unanimous vote. And I think that's a great start, but we got a long way to go. So to me, I think Juneteenth is important for us to raise the awareness and recognize what Juneteenth means, what the documentation meant, what happened in Texas, why it took so long for something to be written and something to be acted on, but then also understanding what led to Juneteenth as well in our history.
So with this being the very first Juneteenth that's being celebrated officially in New Jersey, because some towns might have already had celebrations, what are you guys doing in your town to make sure that people are aware, not only of the holiday itself, but the educational portion of the holiday? Mayor Branco?
Well, in Newark, first, there are various Juneteenth celebrations that have been going on in Newark for decades. Now, I grew up, my parents had a Juneteenth celebration on the block for years. The city of Newark we do a teach-in in the city on Friday, the day before Juneteenth. We're doing a teach-in. We did it last year. We're doing it this year. We do it for half the day, and the other half we allow people to leave. we're having a rally on that Saturday, Juneteenth, in front of City Hall for reparations and talk about Juneteenth in the city. We also have an affair in the foyer, or I should say, the basement area of City Hall. We're having all Black businesses from the area there, so people come down and, you know, support Black business in the community.
Mayor Dellisford?
So we're planning an all-day event at one of our centrally located parks. And that'll include a panel discussion with a variety of age school children about Juneteenth, local musicians, you know, poets, more than 40 vendors. We're also going to have some academic speakers come from Kean and Stanford universities to do a panel discussion. We're planning an award ceremony for local social justice advocates and all type of activities for children of all ages to make them more aware of what Juneteenth is all about. And our event, we're sponsoring it with our local school district and local businesses and volunteers in the community. Essentially, our intent really is to bring awareness to our entire community. And I expect that the 2021 program will be the first of many annual Juneteenth celebrations, because this is actually the first Juneteenth celebration in the Township of Union.
Same with South Orange as well. Mayor Frank?
Yes. Thank you, Trustee Jones. So we started with an event in 2019 at an historical house in Maplewood called the Duran Hennett House. And we talked about the importance of Juneteenth. We had actors that were period actors. We also did a robust study or program, if you will, about the history of slavery in New Jersey. And from there in 2020, with the tragic murder of Brother George Floyd, our youth, our MAPSO Youth Coalition came to us and said, you know, you're putting all this time and effort and dollars into celebrating the 4th of July, but why aren't you doing the same for Juneteenth? So they called us out, and I was like, you know what, you're right. You're right. You know, we did this one little event. So that's why this year, we've also partnered with South Orange, and we're having this Juneteenth week. And so it started this past Sunday, where we had all these Black small businesses come to a place called Yale Corner on Springfield Avenue, where they were able to sell their produce, their merchandise, and we could support them with our dollars, raise awareness of the businesses, not only maybe with South Orange, but out Essex County. We also had live jazz there by Greg Buford and his quartet. And then we had spoken word, wonderful spoken word by Heru Stewart and Eric Shorter, the amazing people of the spoken word. And we had also the Urban Cone place there. So we basically wanted to celebrate Black commerce. And then on Monday, as you know, we raised a Juneteenth flag, as 2 communities in South Orange. And then we're doing this panel. And again, I really appreciate Mayor Baraka and Mayor Dellisford being here with us this evening. Very valuable time that they're providing for us to have this dialogue. And then we've been doing virtual Zooms with our respective libraries. And then Saturday, we have a robust program. We're starting early in the morning with our MAPSO youth over at the Jefferson School. And then we move on to Duran Hennett House, have a robust program there. Our Elks are, for the first time in the history of that program, they're actually doing raising I think a Juneteenth and Pride flag and celebrating our Elks in our community, which, is unheard of, unprecedented, if you will. And then, as you know, we're moving over to South Orange, where we're going to have all that food, and we're going to have, music and programming, and
we have poetry and spoken word. It's going to be really, really good.
In a surprise spectacular at night. So, we're really proud of that. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to establish, the importance of Juneteenth in our community, just like all these other events we do. So that's what we're doing in Maplewood and South Orange.
So I've been having discussions with my friends just around Juneteenth and the symbolism of making it a holiday. Last year, as Mayor Dellisford actually said, some people just heard of it, and so a lot of businesses and companies were basically giving their employees off. And then this year, some of them are pulling it back. My fear is that Juneteenth might become a holiday where people don't truly understand the importance of the holiday itself. So how do you ensure, especially going into the future, and I know Mayor Baraka, you said that Newark has areas where they've celebrated it a lot. How do you make sure that the integrity of the holidays stays and you actually understand what's happening 5 years, 10 years from now, and why you're celebrating it?
I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure we provide information and history to people of our communities, to let them know what Juneteenth is about. Same way people understand the rest of what these holidays are about and they celebrate them. And they've been acculturated in it growing up in their community, in their household. The same way people know what Thanksgiving is, same way people know what Christmas is. These are acculturated national holidays that have been talked about, discussed, TV, movies, church, everything promote this. And we have to do the same thing around Juneteenth. And I think we're going to have to take the primary role in making sure that enough education is being done in our communities so people are clear. I mean, Juneteenth is one of the oldest holidays that we have as a community. It's been passed down from generation to generation. There's been a gap of celebrating Juneteenth right after Reconstruction because of all of the lynching and slave codes and Jim Crow that was going on. There wasn't much to celebrate then. It became rejuvenated around the civil rights movement in that era. People were fighting for equality and democracy. And so the celebration of Juneteenth resurfaced once again. And so we just have to make sure people understand what it is.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. We have to take the lead and educate, and we got to work with our school districts too, at least in our community, to find a way to get that incorporated into the curriculum. Because the curriculum is so imperative. What you learn in your school and also through social media too, that's what you know. And so that's why when you asked that first question, Trustee Jones, I didn't learn that I didn't learn about Juneteenth in grammar school or middle school or high school, or college even, right? So we have a responsibility to raise the awareness to make this mainstream, but also make it also just key for all of us in our community, so we know what it means. And then also it is a celebration in a lot of ways, but also I like what President Obama does on MLK Day. He has a day of service. He goes and does service, right? Because Dr. King was about service. So I think there's an opportunity to incorporate some type of service, something for our community or the greater community on Juneteenth as well.
I agree. I think you want to encourage it at our local schools, make sure that they incorporate it into their history lessons and their annual teaching plans. I also think it would be imperative for elected officials to perhaps, encourage our local libraries to do programs and to promote it, identify books and literature about Juneteenth for all ages. And then maybe even highlight it in, public buildings. And then, most importantly, I think we should continue to host, ongoing public events. And whether it's theater productions or readings or poetry sessions or, panels and discussions like this one.
So when I look at the camera and I see, or the Zoom, and I see the 4 boxes and I see 4 brown faces, I think about the importance of having role models, especially for young kids to look up to and say, I could be a Mayor Baraka, or I can be a Mayor Dellisford, or I could be Mayor McGeehee. Did you guys have role models growing up? And if you did, who were those role models growing up? Who did you look up to and say, I kind of want to emulate that person, or I really like, what they're doing, and I really want to see myself doing some of that stuff?
Well, my parents were my role models. My father, my mother, they're my role models. And later on, my mother introduced me to literature and life of Paul Robeson. And I grew an affinity towards Paul Robeson. We were both born April 9th. I began to think that I could do some of the things that Paul Robeson did, and began to read and study and learn about who he was. But my father and mother were my role models initially growing up, definitely.
I'll echo that sentiment. In my person, I have a bunch of different role models depending upon the role that I'm playing, right? Whether it's a professional, on a personal level, or in politics. But on a personal level, my parents are definitely my role models. They are hard workers. They came here from Haiti in the late 60s with $36 in their pocket. My dad is a pediatrician. He has a practice in Newark for over 50 years now. And my parents were always relentless, hard workers, and relentless in their message that being well-educated, independent, and confident prepares you to face any challenge, including being a Black woman in any arena. So I would definitely say my parents. Locally, on a personal level, I would say, Cliff People, who's the former mayor of Union. He's a great mentor. He's professional. He does his research. He's very thoughtful about all things, whether it's legislation and its potential impacts on the township, what measures or steps to take in order to appropriately and effectively respond to the needs of residents and stakeholders in our community, and a host of other issues. I gotta say, he's very fair. He's respectful to everyone that he encounters. And I'm willing to bet that he sleeps really good at night.
Mayor Mickey.
Thank you, Trustee Jones. For me, I loved my mom and my dad. They were great. I love them to death. And my dad still gives me a mess about if I'm staying up too late and things like that. He's always telling me why I should have never left Chicago. He always reminds me that I'm missing out on this food and that food, but if I was living in Chicago, I could still be eating at his table. So I get that reminder. But for me, I had two role models, and my first role model was my grandfather, my mom's dad, who came up from Lexington, Mississippi, to Chicago. He was a pullman on the railroad, and when my parents first got married, they lived in my grandparents' house, and so he kind of raised me, as a young one, and my grandmother too. And I remember just idolizing everything he did. He worked so hard. He always worked hard, and I don't want to get choked up, but he was just always telling me, you got to work hard. Mayor Brock, that's what I told you about them cornflakes in the corn. But he anything that was broken, he fixed it himself, and he would figure it out. He was so proud because he was like one of 11, down in Lexington, Mississippi. He had a farm. They tended a farm, and then they would, they sell their products to Carnation and get like pennies on the dollar, not that the same white families got. And then he had to get out of the South. Some things happened. He had to get out of there. He got a job, and he worked the railroads. He was, and so he was gone for a week or two at a time, and left my grandmother with their 3 kids, my mom and my uncle and my aunt. And but when I, came into the picture, he always he showed me how to do everything, how to cut grass, how to, he showed me how to wire a socket. I mean, he always was. He never sat down. He was always working on fixing his car, working on his hedges, to make sure his house was nice. And he just showed me the definition of being, really being proud of what you own and taking care of it, appreciative, and taking and understanding the value of what you have, and taking care of it, and being right and respectful to others. So he will always be my role model, Papa. And then my other role model was Harold Washington, the first Black mayor of the city of Chicago. I was fortunate that when my parents had saved their money and bought a condo on the south side of Chicago, that he lived around the corner from my house. And Harold taught me that I could be a mayor. I could do anything. He used to go to a little corner store over by my house, and every once in a while I run into him in there. He had his security detail. And I remember he was just a big man, a big person, and had huge hands and little beady eyes, and he had a great smile, and he was just so personable, and he was my hero. I mean, he was Harold. I remember, he's educated, and took so much crap from everybody, but he, when you talk about young people looking up to you, and I'm sure the young people looking up to these mayors here today, I can speak from, truth to power. I looked up to another Black mayor before I had the opportunity to sit in this chair.
So speaking of going into politics, I would love to know what made each of you go into politics, and what was the driving force, and what is the one thing that you do want to accomplish before you move out of your mayor roles and into another role, or Mayor Baraka?
Well, I was an educator. I think I still am for the past 22 years. Before not before I got into politics, while I was an educator, ran for office. It just took me a long time to win. But I was involved in community organizing. I was an activist in my city, and an educator at the same time, a teacher, a vice principal, and a principal. And that kind of opened the door for politics for me in terms of trying to do things for my children, do things for their families, organizing in the community. We wound up marching down to City Hall all the time. And then I figured, we always go down here. Obviously, it's something inside the building that we're trying to get. So I decided to run for office at 24 in 1994 in the city of Newark. And, obviously I lost, but we stayed at it. 16 years later, I became a councilman.
That's great. Mayor McGehee?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting you asked that question because Mayor Baraka and I were on a panel a couple weeks ago, and so he might have heard some of my answer previously. But really, my goal is to provide opportunity for everyone that looks like me in my community. I'm proud of the people in our community that I've been able to appoint to committees and boards so that we have a voice and we're at the table. That's really important. I think that, as I've said before, if you're not, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And it's true, because even though people may think they know who we are and think they know how we act, they think they know our culture, they think they know us, can tell us, you're not us, with all due respect. And so we have to be there to let you know how it is. And for me, I think balance is important. I look forward to continuing to provide balance to our community and to put, action behind the words that Maplewood and South Orange talk about, inclusivity and all are welcome. Well, let's make sure, let's put truth to power with that. And, and that continues to be my goal, have that balance and to be someone who provides opportunity for those who will come after me. I think that's very important. I think the greatest gift you give is the gift of putting people in a position to succeed. And that's my aim.
Dallas Ford?
Like Mayor Baraka and Mayor McGee, I'm an urban planner. I've worked with so many municipalities on a plethora of projects and a host of different communities for 25 plus years. And so I've dealt with a lot of elected officials, not necessarily in Union Township, and actually honestly didn't think that I would actually be in office. But one thing that I can say is that I love my hometown, and I felt that as an urban planner, I could enhance it by being part of the township committee, because we have a township committee form of government in Union. And so I introduced myself to a member of the township committee, inevitably joined the planning board, and essentially, interestingly enough, a member of the township committee was retiring, and so a seat was open. And so I was approached about my interest in becoming a township committee member. And just a few fun facts about me. I'm Haitian American. I come from a really large family. And again, very well educated, work extremely hard, and consequently they've been blessed with good fortune. But most importantly, my family lives by the mantra service to others. And they don't just talk about it. I gotta tell you, growing up and to this day, I've witnessed how they live that mantra of service to others on a daily basis. I'm also a spiritual person and a staunch believer that to whom much is given, much is required, and everything happens for a reason. And I'm also a planning geek. I truly enjoy my profession for so many reasons, but when I was approached about my interest in becoming a member of the Township Committee and gave it some serious thought, I figured I would essentially use my professional skill sets and offer ideas to further enhance my township and to serve my community. And so for me, it was a win-win situation. I was nominated by the chairperson. I ran on the line. I campaigned extremely hard, and I was elected to serve. And you know, I just think, you know, that means so many things to so many different people. But to me, it's really a matter of really being able to give something that I'm passionate about to so many people, my friends, my neighbors, and even, you know, those that I don't know in the township, and to make the quality of life and the physical and socioeconomic conditions in the town that much better.
Okay. So I have a question. So we're all career people and seasoned, meaning we're over 20. And so, as you know, as Black people, we run into situations where we are not treated equally amongst our peers. We could have better credentials, but just the color of our skin will throw people and force people to treat us differently. How do you combat that? Like in this, and as a mayor, how do you combat that? I know I deal with that a lot, but I'm not a mayor, but Mayor McGee, how do you combat that?
I think, you know, end of the day is that because of the way our society is established, is that we're always questioned. You know, do we know what we're talking about? Can we handle what we're dealing with? And are we up to the task? And so I handle it assertively, but not in an angry fashion. I think a lot of times people may be looking for the quote unquote the angry Black man, and I just prefer not to give them that. And I use my wit and my assertiveness to address that. But I also don't forget those people. And so when the opportunity comes for me to address those situations and those individuals, you could rest assured that I do. You know, so really you have to just be on your game. We call it put your face on. You gotta have your face on. And, you know, and that's why, you know, here we had to work twice as hard to get, you know, Justice Martha half as much. It's because, you know, the way the system is set up. You know, we talked about, you know, recently we talked about like the Jim Crow and with the mass incarceration. Like the system is designed, the system is designed the way it's supposed to be, which is to be against us. And that's in the boardroom, that's in the chambers, that's in everything that we do. So I just game up, and so I come 100, and I'm just ready to roll. And I love when I'm underestimated, you know, and it happens a lot. And a lot of it is because of the color of my skin. But don't be fooled, I'm ready to roll.
Mayor Dellisfor, the same question, but a different spin. As a Black woman or a Haitian American woman, I'm sure you, like me, have walked into places and they just assume, and you're a planner. So what are your thoughts? How do you combat some of that stuff in your career, and how would you suggest other people do it?
So great question, honestly. You know, I mentioned earlier that my parents always pressed on the fact that you can face any challenge if you're, you know, well-educated and prepared. And so I'm big on preparation, and I'm big and you know, confidence is another thing. As a Black woman or a Black mayor, you know, you encounter so many different situations, and the profession that I'm in is, you know, pretty much predominantly it's a white male dominated field. And so again, I reflexively rely on facts. I'm somebody who's always assessing a situation, but I'm big on like providing precise information, and really just dealing with people on a one-on-one basis for who they are. If I encounter, you know, any racial injustices or you know, any kind of economic disparities or whatever, or somebody who's, you know, just kind of, you know, just straight out racist, I like to combat that kind of like Mayor McGee, who, yeah, I do it with a smile. I use my intelligence, and I just kind of, you know, address it head on. Because you're right. And the issue is, you know, you don't want to be a angry Black man, but you also don't want to be an angry Black woman, right? But at the end of the day, you know, I believe in being authentic. And so if there's something or somebody who feels the need to try to challenge my intellect or even my decision making because I'm Black, I do take personal offense to that, but I make sure that I deal with it professionally and directly.
Okay. Mayor Veronica, I have, before you go, I have a question. It's the same question, but so your family has been in Newark for 80 years plus, and your father is a Mary Baraka. And so your name over the years speaks for itself, and you are definitely your own person. How do you, as a mayor, because you have a very large name, how do you combat that? Because I'm sure people have different thought processes when they see you and what they think of you when they see you.
Well, absolutely. You know, I mean, and that doesn't just come from other people. It also comes from our own people. You know, we also were educated in the system that has taught us that we were inferior. And so our expectations of each other is also low. And we challenge each other in ways that we don't challenge other people. We have vulnerable skin. Our skin makes us vulnerable. And so people think it's easy to attack us. And somebody else in opposition would nearly get as much grief as you get because you're African American. And so I think it's important that we work hard, that we're prepared, that we do all of the things that we're supposed to do. It is completely unfair that we have to work twice as hard as everybody else. That's why we're struggling for equity. But I like to believe that white supremacy is a weakness, and that people's false sense of superiority will always make them lose. This idea of underestimating our capacity and our ability has always been a mistake in America, and it has always led to us getting one step up or one step forward because people underestimate our capability to organize, to orate, to express, to speak, to build, to do various things, and we wind up doing it anyway. So I believe white supremacy is a weakness, and as long as these folks come at us in that way, they'll never know what we have the ability and capacity to do.
Okay. So speaking of white supremacy, all of us, as you know, last year, in the midst of the pandemic, not only are we dealing with the pandemic itself, but we're dealing with watching George Floyd die on television. And so it was a very traumatic experience for many of us. And I know we as Black people, a lot of times we don't watch those videos because it's the same outcome, or it seems to be the same outcome. What are some ways that you've personally, within your city, thought to bring further awareness of equality for the Black community? Mayor Davenport, I believe Mayor Frank, ladies first.
Yeah, I would definitely say, during the pandemic, it was just, assistance to frontliners, just providing wraparound services. There's, as far as like ensuring that, we don't necessarily gentrify and that everybody has, that there's equality and opportunity. I think what I would say is we've highlighted our needs to listen and to understand that there is racial inequity in America. So we've hosted so many different programs, so many different events. And I think the other issue that we're dealing with is we have sort of a mayor's wellness piece, because it's evident that, there's so many inequities, whether it's in transportation and mental health, medical assistance. And so those are areas that we're really honing into and trying to address what the disparities are and the inequities are.
Mayor Baraka or Mayor Frank?
I guess I think you're on mute, Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor Baraka, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was trying to get you to repeat some of that again.
I was actually asking, what have you done within your city to bring further awareness to equality for the Black community within your city?
Well, I think we deal with these things every day in terms of policy that we create and develop policy for equity around wealth and the wealth gap to create opportunity for housing, for small business ownership, for people to be able to get city contracts. We have, family meetings, men's meetings, women's meetings to talk about very specifically how to do these things, how to empower yourself, take care of your community, your block. And so I think it starts with policy and the things that you begin to do in office that speaks to the residents about what your priorities are and also about what you think they should be engaged in. I think we should talk to people as clearly and as frankly as we can about what's going on in our community and how we need everybody collectively to help us get out of these situations. And you have to have very open discussions about these things, no matter who's in the room.
Mayor Frank?
Yeah, and for us, it's about the culture. As Mayor Baraka said, policy. We started a community board on police. The blueprint was right there in Newark, trying to provide a platform where we can have a deeper dive and understanding of how we're policing our community and make our police department more accountable. So having a culture around the police department, knowing that they will be more accountable than they have been in the past. Culture again in our police department. We had some incidents before I got elected that were unacceptable, and making change so that culture was different. And that's from the bottom up and the top down, and trying to squeeze everywhere in between. So starting with leadership there, as well as in our new hires, making sure that the women and men that we brought in understood what type of policing we wanted to do in our community, be it community policing, relationship policing, and making sure that they understood that mindset. Because once you hire a police officer, or a firefighter too, for the most part, they're with you for a quarter of a century. Then also in our community, working with organizations that new organizations that have come up, we have organizations like Soma Action and Soma Justice, and organizations that have been around for a long time, like the Community Coalition on Race, and trying to give them a stronger voice so that we can move back from a micro perspective or macro perspective from ideation to action. I've heard a term in our community, I don't know if you've heard in your communities too, liberal by town and conservative by block, so trying to move away from that. And then I think the last part of the culture movement to let our people know in our community that there should be and needs to be more equality is in our schools. That is really, it's not only a place of learning, but it's a place of growth in terms of, of culture and a community, and how our young people, our young Black and brown people are treated in their schools. They take that, it attaches to them, they bring that into the home, right? And it also deals with self-esteem and self-care. So that's a huge part of it too. And working with our school district and key people to make sure that our young Black and brown brothers and sisters know that they're cared for.
Okay. So thank you for bringing up policing. Since I've been a politician before then, there's been certain terms that have been triggers, especially depending on the community or the block, as you might say, Mayor McGee. And some of those terms are Black Lives Matter, defund the police. And we heard President Barack Obama try to explain what he thought defund the police meant to him. And so I would love to know, when you hear those things, what does defund the police mean personally to you versus what other people might think it means? Mayor Baraka?
Yeah, I think at this point, the defund the police is really folks' radical imagination, right? They want to figure out how to create a police department where we're not being murdered at traffic stops or for selling loose cigarettes or a fake $20 bill. People getting shot in the back or their knee on their neck. So people are trying to imagine a new police department. And this idea of public safety in the hands solely of the police department is just not congruent to what public safety really is around the country. And it has not worked in our communities. It has not worked in communities that are experiencing violence anyway, because these communities are still experiencing violence with these levels of police there. So at the end of the day, I think it really is about how to create public safety for our communities in a way that just does not involve police, that also involves social workers, if you will, or other opportunities, mediators and other things of that nature to create violence reduction and not rely heavily on over-policing neighborhoods, and then putting money in other areas where we can prevent violence from taking place and crime from taking place in the first place. Money in schools, money in, and job training and opportunity, all of those things. And I think that is where the shift is. And that's what the really defund is about. It's just a radical imagination of people who have completely been fed up.
Chairman Gaines?
Yeah, so, when I hear defund the police, I think the definition of that is something that needs to really be addressed. I think the mindset of defund the police is, okay, you're going to stop, allocating money out of your municipal budget to have a police force. And that's just not feasible or anything that I think that should be done. I think when you think about your police department, you want to find ways to enhance it and align it more with the values and the culture of what you want in your community. So if anything, it's reallocating maybe some funding in there that aligns with things that fit that particular goal. In our budget this year, we made a significant decision a six-figure decision to look at social workers in a way to address that disconnect between police and our community and individuals who may need a social worker versus policing. Training. You can never get enough training. And I stress that because you think about it, in your job, your day job, if you have a full-time day job, including, your public service, or if you're an athlete, you're always training, you're always practicing, right? You're always practicing to get ready for the game. You can never have enough practice. You never have enough training. So figuring out, making sure there's funding there to make sure that you have training, a lot of training in the right training. And then also, again, coming down to the fact that funding money is not going to change, if there is a culture there that doesn't align with your community. Money is a part of something, but it really comes down to physical interaction, leadership, conversation, collaboration. Those are the things that are going to really help evolve a police department versus just extracting funds and thinking that the community completes itself.
Telesport?
So what I'll say is, first and foremost, that in my opinion, policing is an essential part of the community. And so, when I defund the police, I think they should have came up with a better term. Let's start there, right? But in my opinion, what it means is to utilize resources to reform a structure that isn't necessarily optimal, right? But in my experience, I've yet to encounter an exceptional industry. So when I think about how do we do that, defunding the police is supplementing public safety by incorporating other industries, like Mayor Baraka mentioned, whether it's social services, mental health, et cetera, but using those resources and those people to enhance the existing system. In Union Township, I can say that we have phenomenal officers with great leadership. But prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, we were always seeking ways to constantly improve and to address any deficiencies that existed. But I got to tell you, and I want to be clear about this, I applaud every single police officer because the moment they leave their homes, they don't know if they will ever return. And so, I think if there's any way to supplement the resources or to further enhance the departments, I don't see a negative in that.
There's so many questions I can ask you guys, and as you know, I had a list, but I'm going to ask one last question, and it's more about self-care. A lot of people have dealt with the emotional aspect of the pandemic in different ways. How did you deal with the pandemic on a personal level? What did you do to ensure that what was happening in our cities, because we all were getting the statistics of the county, and it was literally like go, and looking at the numbers and really pushing for people to get vaccinated. What are some of the things that you did to take care of yourself?
I'll tell you on a personal level, I come from, a household with, that are medical professionals. And so all of my life, I've always been very mindful, but, I've worked in my dad's office since I was in junior high. And so being around illnesses or is never really, I've never really been too fearful of it, but in this case, it was unprecedented times. And for me personally, I wanted to just make sure that, I followed protocol. So, I made sure that I wore my mask and I socially distanced. And I'm sure the other mayors can attest to this as well, we had to be up and out every day. There was never a day that I stayed home. And whether it was, going to deliver foods or anything, working, addressing issues on a local level or even on a regional level, it was just, I think we're in a position where we don't have the luxury of putting ourselves first. And so for me, again, I followed protocol and made sure that, I took every necessary step to remain healthy, and that's exercising, et cetera. And, just again, made it a point to, prioritize my health, but also to prioritize the general public.
Thank you.
For me, it was really three things. It was reading, diet and exercise. Because you talk about self-care. So for me, it was reading everything I can get my hands on about, COVID-19 and the coronavirus and all the worst case scenarios, just reading everything, New England Journal of Medicine, anything I can get my hands on. And then also reading for my own personal, I just to get away from it, to get away from it, not necessarily streaming television, but just reading. My diet, because, being home so much versus previously before COVID, the refrigerator's right there. And I was worried I was going to get into it. So I was in fact, my diet was better last year than this year. And those who see me later could testify. So I was really had a strict diet about, my regimen, about what I would eat, my water intake. It was really important to me just to try to not to let myself go physically. And then to that point, it leads to the exercise. So, I'd work out a lot, run a lot, just working out. And that self-care helped me deal with the stress because, the unknown was so, at such a high level, and I'll speak for myself, every day you were learning, and you were just, you were leading as you went, as you learned, leading as you learn. And so you were making decisions that impacted people's lives. And what you understand, it's a lot of stress. And so making sure I took care of myself so I could be mentally, physically, and spiritually, with the right mindset was important to me. And that's how I self-cared myself during the pandemic.
Mayor Baraka?
Yeah, I think everything was said. I'll echo what everybody else said. But the point is, we're in a job where we have to really focus on our community. And that really took the extent of everything that we were doing, definitely what I was doing in the largest city in the state that was affected by the pandemic, probably more than anybody. We worked hard here to make sure residents were safe, researching, passing laws, ordinances, whatever we had to do, executive orders to make sure that our community was safe and incorporate those things into our daily practices. I had a Facebook Live that I still do. I did it every single day. Now
I watched a lot of it. Yeah, it was wonderful.
And we would still do it 3 days a week, and we've been doing it since April of last year. So we continue that, try to uplift the spirits of the people in this community, and at the same time keep people informed and safe.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all three of you, Mayor McGehee, Mayor Dellisper, Mayor Baraka, for coming tonight. This is really wonderful, and I hope that people listen to your words and they really look up to you and continue to try to emulate you. And good luck in your cities, and have a great Juneteenth holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, mayors. I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for your time.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.